Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Reb Steve, thank you for the wonderful introduction. And I have to say, the last time I was standing actually in this very spot was High Holidays 2013, and I was leading a family service in this very room. This is another one of those moments over the last several hours and days that have been these echo moments where I stand in a place and I can feel the echoes of exactly what I was doing or something that I did in every spot in this building. To see the wonderful faces, smiles, handshakes, hugs has been absolutely amazing. Last night, the 20s and 30s Shabbat dinner, I saw a bunch of, well, I still call them kids. It's a shame that they have grown older and I have stayed the same age. An unfortunate affliction, I know. But to see so many of them now, and then of course I'm seeing them also through the prism of where they were. To also hear what they're doing these days. The future is so bright for this community. You should all be in awe of what our young adults are doing. Everything from community work to PhDs to involvement in the synagogue to being on the board of the synagogue. This is the pride that we should feel and the hope that we should have for everything that we do. I have to say I have failed in one aspect of my visit here. Danielle asked me if I could bring some warmer weather from Scottsdale, and unfortunately I do not have the power to move such things, but I assure you that I tried my best. And people have wondered, how is it that I have dealt with such weather as now? I said, well, look, I've lived here in Toronto for almost 7 years. I reacclimatized fast, but it also helps with the fact that I know that tomorrow afternoon I will be on a plane and ultimately back up in Scottsdale, Arizona. And only to trade that off. And trust me, in Arizona, we will be praying for weather like this 5 months from now. When it is, I remember, Reb Steve, when we did the coffee conversation, I uttered something that only an Arizonan would say. You asked me, how is the weather? And I said, it's only 105 degrees outside. And in my book, that is cool enough to play golf. One memory that sticks with me and I think is important to remember and also really congratulate Beth Tzedec on, at this point next weekend, next Shabbat will mark 15 years since an amazing trip emanated from this building. 44 teenagers, 44 high school students left this building to go on a 4-day trip, leaving here, driving to Buffalo, New York, to fly to Atlanta, Georgia, to then drive up to Clayton, Georgia, where we spent Shabbat at Ramah Darom. The day after that, before Shabbat actually, we raced to Whitwell, Tennessee to visit the National Children's Holocaust Memorial, the Paper Clips exhibit. Many of you have seen the documentary and know about. Then to share Shabbat, and then afterwards we came down to Atlanta, Georgia to spend our final days visiting the Martin Luther King Center in Atlanta, Georgia. The reason why I bring this trip up is one, in my time here, this trip was a point of pride for me. But it was also an incredibly personal trip. The trip itself was actually, or the idea of it and the organization was driven by teens themselves. What they wanted to do, all the way down to the menu that they wanted me to request from Roma de Rome, some of the activities that they wanted to do. The Martin Luther King Center visit was actually a request from teenagers that we go there and learn. When they found out more about my own story, the fact that my parents both grew up in a segregated South, they wanted to hear stories just like that. So what did? We flew my mother in from Arizona to Atlanta, Georgia, to speak on her experience of growing up in the 40s, 50s, and 60s in Oklahoma City. A time where, and I was been telling this many in my speaking engagements over the past couple of days, a time where my mother was the only black person to graduate from her high school. And how did that happen? Well, my grandmother sent her to a Catholic school because that was the only place that black people could get a quality education. Schools were intentionally underfunded in neighborhoods that served black communities. So my grandmother sent my mother to a school where my mother could get a great education, but at the same time, she stuck out like a sore thumb. And of course, discrimination did happen. My mother always tells me this story about how her school won the state basketball championship. The students went to go celebrate at a diner. My mother walked into the diner to celebrate with everyone else, and the owner stepped in front of her and pushed her back out the door, and she fell on her back. The owner said, "We don't serve your kind here." When the other students heard about and seen what had happened, they decided to stand up and walk out. When the owner saw that all of this business was walking out the door, he said, "Hold on, come back. We'll serve her now," begrudgingly. I tell the story often of my mother's birth certificate. My mother was born in San Antonio, Texas, and in 1946, in San Antonio, Texas, they filled out birth certificates by putting the name, the date of birth, the parents. All the other fields on her birth certificate are filled in with one single word: Negroid. My father, of blessed memory, was born in rural Tennessee. My father served in the United States Navy in the Korean War, and it was illegal when my father was born to issue birth certificates to black children. I was incredibly honored when students said, "Bring your mother, we want to learn from her." And of course, it was going to be an incredibly impactful moment for my mother because she had never been to the Martin Luther King Center in Atlanta. Growing up, listening to Dr. King in her house on the radio, seeing him on television, playing recorded speeches of Dr. King to me as a child, this was a pivotal moment. So my mother, this final day, spoke to all 44 participants, plus the staff, and of course the trip was co-sponsored by Beth Tzedec Men's Club, and they sent a representative on the trip as well to record what had happened. My mother is speaking. I'm hearing stories she's never told me. I'm fighting back tears even in this moment, thinking about some of the things that happened to my mom, the most courageous, strong person I know on this planet. Unfortunately, now she can't remember half of what She told everybody. Her brain is starting to fail her. But she still carries the emotion, the pride, the strength that has always been with her entire life. And she poured it out on this day in 2011. At the end of my mother's speech, one of the participants came up to me and said something incredible. They said, "Your mother is a survivor." And it caught me. I had just been on March of the Living a year before, and the concept of survivor holds a specific place, and not only in my heart, but in my mind. But the more I thought about it, this statement is correct. My mother could have been killed in standing up for what she believed was right and true in her heart, that she is as much of a human being and has the equal qualities of everyone else in the world. I started to think about the reason why my father left rural Tennessee. My father, as a kid, I was probably about 10 or 11 years old, he played the song by Nina Simone, "Strange Fruit." Strange Fruit is a song about lynching. My father left rural Tennessee, a little town called LaGrange, Tennessee, a sharecropper's town of about 225 people. He left because one day walking home from school, he saw strange fruit. His father's best friend had gotten into an argument with a white man. LaGrange, Tennessee was too small of a town to be policed by the county sheriff. LaGrange, Tennessee is 2 miles from the Mississippi border. So in my father's young days, the Klan would come up from Mississippi in order to police LaGrange. So getting an argument with a white man was a death sentence. And sure enough, it bore itself out. And when my father saw this man who had been so friendly to his family, all he could do was freeze and just keep walking. He told my grandmother said, "We're out of here." So when I think about instances like that, this student's statement that my mother is a survivor is not too far afield. After this statement, I had a chance to walk with my mother inside of the Martin Luther King Center. My mother was so happy to see this place. We walked through the entire exhibit there, and both of us were crying the entire time. My mother stopped at one particular part of the exhibit, and she pointed to a glass window and she said, "Andre, you got to see this. I had one of these." I had no idea what she was talking about. I looked further. Dr. King had created for youth this nonviolent commitment to nonviolent resistance commitment card. And on it had 10 particular things that Dr. King wanted everyone to do in order to stand up for rights, but in a nonviolent way. My mother pointed and said, "I signed one of these when I was in high school. When you come to visit me, I will show you mine." And my mother broke down. Months later, I visited Arizona, and I wanted to make sure that my mother held to her promise to show me this commitment card. On her commitment card, it was a cardstock paper. It, of course, colored by age. And on it, it was circled a couple times over the fourth item on the list. The fourth item read, walk and talk in the spirit of love. Love is the essence of God. Walk and talk in the spirit of love. And I was like, I asked my mother, why did you circle this particular one? My grandmother was we used to call her the biblical police officer in our family. If you said God's name, she would smack you on the chest, and she would say, "Don't use God's name in vain." I thought about that, and I thought to myself, in the Aserata Dibrot, that's number 4. And I started to make the connection. We do a disservice to God and God's name. It is, in fact, a Hilul Hashem when we speak with words of hate, when we speak with words of inhumanity. But it's not just words. It is what we do. It is how we walk in this life. How we portray love from one person to another that really makes a difference. There are a lot of people who talk, not enough people who walk. And Dr. King was calling not only my mother, but all of us to walk and talk in the spirit of love. Love is the essence of God. My mother left the trip after her visit to the King Center, and she went back home, and I have never cried more on one trip than ever before on this trip, because I was amazed by what our teens at that time were able to grasp, and not me teaching them, but them teaching me. It is Black History Month for sure. Beth Tzedec doesn't have to do much work to find its place in celebrating and honoring Black History Month. Yes, at one point in history you had a Black youth director, but also what you should be proud of is the fact that you have a generation coming through this congregation who fully understand what it means to walk and to talk in the essence and the spirit of love. And you should be proud of that. Every single day that you step in this building or think or make a contribution or volunteer within these very walls, that you are committed to a community that doesn't just talk, but is also committed to walking the walk as well. Thank you all for welcoming me back in this place that I consider my home away from home. And there's too many handshakes, hugs, and smiles to name, but definitely I feel welcome back in these walls, and I want to thank you all for it. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.